speaking about the rebuild, speaking about prospects, this week was the third anniversary of the letter. I was actually at the game before they sent this out, right before they said that they're sellers. I think it was one of the smartest moves in franchise history. Just be honest with people. We're going to rebuild. We're going to tear it down. They kind of got lucky with the last time they attempted to do this, which was right before the lockout. And they got lucky because some of these guys that they drafted were then playing in Hartford, and then they found they drafted this goalie Al Montoya, and then found another one named Henrik Lundqvist, and went, "Oh shit, we don't need that other guy." But what are your thoughts in the 3 years that's passed?
Well, it's funny you mentioned them getting lucky. I mean, yeah, they did get lucky with Lundqvist and having Yager there, and the Yager and Friends line, as I call it, ended up being really great for 2 years. This rebuild, you're right. There is quite a bit of luck, and you do have to get lucky with a lot of this stuff. And that first draft in 2018 might end up being one of the best drafts this team has ever had. You're going to get Keandre Miller out of that, who's already proving that he's a future stud. You got Vitaly Kravtsov, who's going to come over, and I really think that he's going to play very, very, very well with this team. Just watching what I've seen in the KHL with Tractor and the clips I've watched and the scouting reports I've read, and just not even just watching his goal clips, but if you watch clips from him like away from the puck, he's doing things that he didn't do in the previous 2 to 3 years there. He's making real smart and sound defensive plays. He's playing well, battling along the boards. The playmaking is just there. They don't have anyone that could finish on that Tractor team. Vitaly Kravtsov's going to come over. Then you're going to have Nils Lundqvist. Those guys all came in the first round of that draft. And then there's other guys later in the draft that are going to come up that are going to surprise people as well.
Kakko is the face of the Rangers rebuild because he was the lottery pick, regardless of what Alexei Lafreniere does. Kakko is the face of the rebuild, but Keandre Miller, Vitaly Kravtsov, and Nils Lundqvist are the rebuild. They're the rebuild. That's what let us know we're once those guys are here, we're in a new era. I mean, we're already kind of in that new era, but and I think the success of the team last year might have been a little bit of fool's gold now. We're starting to see Igor Shesterkin, who did a lot of it on ability last year, now has to rely on technique, and he's not exactly getting there at the moment. How he can overcommit on some shots, how Georgiev can be on angles. Oh, that'll all be fixed. Going back to the 2005-2006 season, one of the big things is Henrik Lundqvist was basically perfectly polished when he showed up. That's not the case usually with a rookie.
Well, Shesterkin is in a similar boat because Henrik Lundqvist was considered by many to be the very best goaltender not in the NHL by the time he entered it. If you've seen his numbers in the Swedish Elite League before he came over with Frölunda, like his numbers were jaw-dropping. They were just video game-like numbers. You shouldn't have been putting up numbers like that in any league. And the same thing with Shesterkin. And you got the common denominator here is you got two guys that are extremely skilled, that were extremely dominant in every league, in the leagues they were playing in. But you also have one of the best goaltending coaches in the world with Benny. Mm-hmm. And it'll be fixed. I think it's a confidence issue, but I mean, you're right. It's got to be addressed, and it's got to be worked on sooner than later if this team wants to open up the window of contending for a cup. And something else that's got to be changed with that is David Quinn. I know I harp on the guy a lot, and I know a lot of people tell me, "Oh, you don't like Quinn, and you're just saying this because you don't like Quinn." No, I see a guy who reminds me of Alain Vigneault in the fact that he, one, can't make in-game adjustments, two, routinely gets outcoached, and three, doesn't have a strategy for when he does. And I don't like the personnel decisions, but I will say it again. This team needs a veteran coach to pull them out of that would be able to pull them out of the rut, especially when they don't have the leadership from the players in the locker room.
He might have been like the right coach 2 years ago, but on the other hand, where he's still going to be judged is how does Lafreniere, how does Kako look?
And in Miller's case, he's an absolute freak athlete. There is just so much raw, natural talent there. I mean, like I said last week, he's only played, this is his 5th year playing defense. 5th. Mm. You got to remember, he was a forward before that. So, I mean, he's going to develop, and he's going to be a little more of a project defensively, but you see the raw ability. Like I said, Seth Jones, if he gets to 100% of his peak, or even 95% or somewhere close to that, I think he's something close to Seth Jones. I stand by it.
And again, I say that's a lot of high praise. I compare him to a young Mark Stahl right now. He's so fluid skating, and he's so confident, and he's got that reach. The one thing, if you remember, especially when Mark Stahl first came in the league, was people would dump the puck in. Mark Stahl would just collect it, look over his shoulder real quick. You think he's turning right, he turns left. You think he's turning left, he turns right. And
yeah,
then
he was really good.
They're out of the zone. He was really good with that. And the play specifically last night was when Barzal was trying to go by him, and Miller just reaches out, just takes away the puck, and Rangers go back the other way. I mean, all praise
sweet check.
Barzal. Yes.
Yeah.
I thought
there was going to be a penalty on it, and then they didn't call a penalty. I was like, huh. I was like, okay. And then you went back and you saw the replay, and it's a perfect sweep check, and he doesn't trip him. I'm like, wow. I was like, that's really, really good. That's because that's a tough player to do that with Matt Barzal. And Miller just made a phenomenal play. He's going to get there defensively. He's not there yet, but he's going to get there defensively, and he's going to be an absolute stud.
The only regret that I kind of have with the rebuild is that they're getting a lot of depth defensively. That's fantastic. They got some pretty good depth goaltenders wise in their system. You're not seeing the greatness in the forwards. That's the only thing that worries me. If they had more depth down the middle, but then again, you can just look at the Joey Keane for Julien Gauthier trade. That's what you need. You need to be able to convert one asset into another asset.
Well, that's part of my point about the 2018 draft was the fact that they got Keane late. They got Olaf Lindbaum in that draft as well. And I mean, if he's healthy, I mean, he could be possibly a good backup, maybe even a borderline starter one day if he's healthy. I mean, that remains to be seen. But to get someone like Joey Keane and get him late and then turn him into Julien Gauthier. So eventually, basically, your 2018 draft so far has turned into 2 players that are in your lineup and another player that will probably see time at the end of the year, and then another player that will probably be with the team next year. To get 4 players like that out of a draft, and obviously, Gauthier is technically not a part of that draft, but using the Keane pick to get Gauthier, that's big. And that's on top of getting Philip Hedl in 2017, and then Morgan Barron, who's going to come out of that draft as well, and will probably end up seeing time either maybe by the end of this year or next year. So, I mean, they made a lot of really good picks in these past 4 drafts. But they need bottom 6 depth. And you're right, forwards are lacking. I mean, we all thought Carl Henriksen could maybe come over one of these days and end up being like a middle 6 center. But you need depth, and you need guys to come up, and they need to address this bottom 6 sooner than later.
And as much as the Rangers are very happy with what they're seeing out of Carl Henriksen, he's not here yet. And it's sort of like how that's where the fans have to sit back and say, look, we were having some success last year, but we're still rebuilding. And I was ready to announce the rebuild was over. I'm one of those people, but they still got work to do. You can't just do it by assembling a bunch of talent. They have to figure out who they are as hockey players and go from there. And I still think there's a high ceiling on Filipino. I just kind of want to see. I want to see him distribute the puck a little bit more.
Yeah, he's got to be better with that. I mean, it looks like he's more of a goal scoring center than he is a playmaking center, but he's better suited for the wing. You know, maybe someone comes along and moves him over to wing, and I don't know. I mean, I have a feeling that they might have to trade Pavel Buchnevich, so you don't know what's going to happen there.
I'll fill that question, and I've been beating this drum a while. There's no feeling. They have to trade Pavel Buchnevich because where does Vitaly Kravtsov slot in? Where does Alexei Lafreniere slot in? Where does Capocacco slot in? I mean, as it stands right now, if the Seattle expansion was today, you got to protect 6 forwards. Panarin has a no trade clause. You're protecting Zibanejad. There's a no move clause on Kreider. So you're left, and Kakko and Lafreniere are not in there. You have to protect Filipino.
Yeah.
And I would actually protect Brendan Lemieux over Ryan Strome, also because I would trade Ryan Strome.
I would try to trade him too. Before
the trade deadline, Strome, D'Angelo, and Buchnevich. Those are 3 guys I've said all along. And again, it doesn't mean I don't like them as players. I like Pavel Buchnevich, but contract situations and cap and guys getting forced, you're going to have to make a decision. You can't just stay with the same guys forever. This isn't a video game.
No, you're right about that. And I've said this. Are you going to want to give another player like Pavel Buchnevich, who's, I would say, a good second line winger, but are you going to want to give him $5 million over 6-7 years, maybe even more, to be what could end up being a third line right winger at one point if the other 2 wingers pan out the way we think they're going to pan out? Absolutely not, in my opinion. Absolutely not.
Oh, hey, you still here? Well, you know what you should do? You should watch some of these other videos on our channel, like this one, comment, and share it with other people.